We're going to talk about the element carbon and the molecular diversity of organic compounds, right? So this is after we talk about the molecular structure of water and the hydrogen bond. So today we all know that plants use solar energy to transform atmospheric carbon dioxide into the molecules of the living organisms in the process we call as photosynthesis. And then the plants and other photosynthetic organisms are usually eaten by the herbivores or the plant-eating animals. And then these animals are eaten by either omnivore or carnivore. And when we die, we are decomposed. Okay, so this is usually a depiction of a typical food chain. Now, what happens next is, because of that food chain, the cycle of nutrients on Earth continues, okay, including the carbon. And then, the biomolecules that we know, the proteins, DNA, the carbohydrates, and other molecules, including the lipids, that makes living matter what they are and distinguish them from inanimate material, or shall we say non-living things, are all composed of carbon atoms, okay, which are bonded to one another and to atoms of other elements, such as what? Oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, and other elements. So for example, sa proteins is actually made up of a carbon skeleton, usually in a cyclic form, and then na ay mga amines ng mga functional groups, which are basically with the presence of a nitrogen atom. For the DNA, aside from the carbon skeleton sa iyahang nitrogenous bases, naapod siya sa iyahang sugar, and of course, sa iyahang phosphate group, naapod na yung mga carbon atoms there. Samot na sa carbohydrates, which are made up of carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen. So, yung ana. So, let's go back in time in the 19th century where understanding on matter started, especially when it comes to mga organic matter. So the quest to explain the properties of matter in terms of atoms is basically very complicated in their time. So let's have this quote. A green ore could ooze metallic copper when heated, but a flower would be quickly converted to a piece of useless charred matter. So they have a hard time understanding the chemical reactions when you try, or the product of chemical reactions when you try to burn, for example, an organic matter. So marag simple lang na siya, but actually, it really puzzled scientists in their time. Kasi, there is a very different products when you try to let inorganic material undergo chemical reaction. Pero pag ang mga organic materials, lahi pod ang result. So, it really puzzled them. And that is why, in 1808, Jöns Jacob Berzelius coined the term organic chemistry, a field dedicated to the study of substances from living organisms. Okay? So substances, molecules from living organisms. Mga molecules that makes us and our waste products are all subject of organic chemistry. But there was this problem. Okay, so although most organic materials were found to contain only the carbon atom, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen atoms, it is not synthesized in the lab. So, dili siya kaya buhaton sa humans. Okay? Artificially. So, they thought that there was a vital force. There was this vital force responsible for giving these organic substances their properties, which are produced by the living things. So, for example, the quinine, kining molecule nga quinine, which are usually for medicine, dili nila mabuhat sa lab. Okay? And because of that, they thought that there was this vital force responsible for giving quinine its property and structure, which can only be infused from the living cinchona tree. The cinchona tree is a known source of that quinine. Okay, it's a kind of phytochemical. So kining quinine, which is found in the cinchona tree, is not synthesized in the lab. So they think there was this divine power or some kind of vital force responsible for that quinine and all other materials in organic matter. Okay? So that's how they thought of organic materials. But it is actually in 1828, almost 2 decades, or yeah, around 2 decades after the conception of the field organic chemistry. So si Frederick Wohler is actually a doctor who isolated urea during an investigation of the waste products found in urine. So what's this urea? Urea is a chemical, it's a crystalline material which is found in urine. Okay, but not just from urine, but it is one of the products in urine that gives it a foul smell. Okay, it is also found in ammonia and other nitrogen-containing compounds. So, what's the takeaway of its experiment? In 1828, when he heated ammonium cyanate, an inorganic material, he expected to isolate cyanide. Of course, it's a kind of explosive. But wala siya nakuha. Instead, he found urea. Okay, he was able to conclude that the urea that he found in urine is the same kind of chemical he found when he heated ammonium cyanate. So the same chemical. So basically, Wohler himself, was able to disprove vital force theory. Okay? So basically, vital force theory is just used by scientists themselves to explain the unexplainable. But Wohler was able to explain that organic compound like urea can be synthesized from inorganic compounds like ammonium cyanate. Okay? Because ammonium cyanate is basically just a compound containing the cyanide and some nitrogen-containing compounds. And when he heated them up, he was able to get urea. So because of that, it revolutionized organic chemistry. And it started the world to synthesize more compounds thought to be organic. Okay? So that is how Wohler contributed to science. So what's with carbon atoms? So si carbon is actually an atom containing 6 electrons in its shells. Okay? 2 in the inner shells and 4 in its valence shell. And because it is incomplete, kasi in chemistry you learn that there is what we call as the rule of thumb nga kailangan our valence shells should have 8 electrons. Okay? So each electron here in the carbon should be paired by another electron. So asa man gikan nang i-pair na itong electron coming from other atoms. They have to share electrons. Covalent bond, di ba? Kasi sharing of electrons eh. So basically, when that happens, it could form more and more molecules. So each carbon atom acts as an intersection point from which a molecule can branch off in as many as 4 directions. When you say 4 directions, usually it has something to do with a single bond, single covalent bond. So isa ka electron dire ang ipares coming from other atom, isa po diri isa po diri isa po diri. So this bond is what we call as a single bond, isa po diri. If double bond. So basically, two electrons coming from a certain atom is bonded to two electron pairs here in the carbon atom. And you will learn more about it in chemistry. Okay? So I want you to read more about the carbon atom here in the next section.